With the CGM and your new take on nutrition with the slow carb approach, like how do you implement that with your clientele? Like what does that look like?
Usually when I'm working with somebody, I have them change nothing. We really want to see what their food and habits are doing. How is that impacting their blood sugar? A lot of times it looks like, I would say, getting to more of that whole real foods, but I'm a big proponent too of looking at what are the things that we can add versus remove. When people's blood sugar aren't jumping, really high and really low, they tend to feel a lot better.
With the CGM and your new take on nutrition with the slow carb approach, like how do you implement that with your clientele? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, usually when I'm working with somebody, I have them change nothing, especially the first week. We really want to see what their food and habits are doing. So I think that's the fun part, is seeing basically what they're doing now, how is that impacting their blood sugar, and then from there we start to, depending on the person, maybe it's adding more protein at meals or just not having carbs all by themselves, or incorporating more fiber. So it tends to vary. I'm thinking of one person I just started working with. She has had type 2 diabetes for over 20 years, and she's never worn a CGM, which blows my mind. I was like, how did you get this far and never wear a CGM? Because I feel like if everybody had access to at least one, like, I would be so curious what our, rates of prediabetes and diabetes would be, because it's such great feedback, and that visual data can be really motivating, I think, to change. But a lot of times it looks like, I would say, getting to more of that whole real foods, but I'm a big proponent too of looking at what are the things that we can add versus remove. So maybe that looks like, eating your usual family meal, but then let's add in some vegetables or more protein. Like, what can we plug in versus remove? And once we get, I think, a lot of that momentum, it feels like a snowball rolling in the positive direction. When people's blood sugar aren't jumping, really high and really low, they tend to feel a lot better. I think a lot of times appetite is a lot better managed. So if you find yourself struggling to maybe make it more than 1 or 2 hours without eating, I think a lot of times that tends to come down to blood sugar. But I will add that with the CGM, and I'm curious if you've maybe seen this, even outside of food, I can see things like stress and sleep show up pretty vividly. And I think some of those lifestyle factors are also easy to intervene when you have some concrete data. So one example is, I see just a lot of people, you can sleep when you're dead, or, basically just really burning the candle at both ends, not getting good recovery and sleep. And we can see on their CGM, like, maybe their average glucose is high, maybe they're, dropping in the middle of the night, or they're having a more drastic response at foods they usually respond pretty well to, just from one bad night of sleep. So I do love that sleep and stress can really easily be teased out on something like a CGM too.
Yeah, and training too. Like when I'm wearing CGM, like and if I'm training, it'll jump up to 130, 140, intra workout, and it stays there until 30, 40 minutes post training. So like having the context to know what it is you're looking at with the given activities and different inputs is super important. But like having that clarity, CGM makes it super easy to do that. There's for a while there when CGMs were like they're pretty popular now, but I feel like they spiked probably a year ago. There was a lot of people in the evidence-based space that were like throwing shade at people using CGMs if they weren't like a bona fide type 1, type 2 diabetic. And I'd be curious to get your thought on their stance because I don't know. I don't know why they're in such up in arms for it.
Yeah, I've been on the receiving end of a lot of those comments.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
like, why
sure.
are you recommending CGM for somebody that doesn't have diabetes? You're taking this away from people that do. I'm like, there's no CGM shortage. Let's just
Yeah.
start there. But I think something like diabetes is not a it's not something that happens overnight. It's a chronic progressive disease, and not even diabetes. Like when we think about metabolic syndrome or a lot of other things, it's not like they're happening overnight. And a lot of it is diet related. And if we're able to, do a little bit of prevention, is a pound a cure, I think that is just tremendous. So I would argue that, again, if we all had access to 1 or 2 CGMs, I think that could really change things. And I think people are starting to get that grasp now, like either using them for themselves or just seeing the difference that it has in their practice. Because I will say that you don't have to wear a CGM forever. It's just nice to maybe wear if you see where you're at. I tend to see a couple different camps of people. Like some people love to have that 24/7 data. They know that I can see it, so they like that accountability. But then I also get some people where they're really nervous about eating specific foods because they know it might spike or they get a little bit of anxiety around food. So for those people, I'm like, let's wear a few. We'll figure out, some sort of framework again, whether that's not having carbs by themselves or really thinking about meal structure or how they eat. And then that helps us. And then in the future, they can kind of spot check if they want, like maybe wear a CGM every quarter or once or twice a year just to do some like solid experiments.
Yeah, I'm in favor of educating people, and I feel like a CGM is a great way to do just that pretty effortlessly. I mean, so many people don't even have a clue what a macronutrient is, and if we can empower them with some basic fundamental knowledge, like they'll be more equipped. I mean, the same thing with tracking macros. Like, I am not suggesting that everybody track macros and be a slave to that habit for the rest of their life. Some people prefer that, in which case more power to them. I prefer that, so I typically track as opposed to not. But, like, you would anybody would benefit from taking 2 weeks, tracking their intake, getting a good understanding as to what 6 ounces, 8 ounces, 16 ounces of a meal looks like, and then be able to take that going forward. The same thing with the CGM, like, if you have no clue how certain foods impact your markers, and you assume that eating a ribeye is gonna have the same effect as eating, Aunt Granny's, pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving, like, where's CGM and see the difference, and you can't really argue the results, you know?
Exactly. I have one client in particular, like, every afternoon, she would just tank, like, energy-wise. She didn't know. We put a CGM on her, and we saw her afternoon snack. It was a rice cake with sugar-free whipped cream and maybe some other, sugar-free chemical bomb on it. I can't
Mhm.
remember exactly, but less than 75 calories, sent her blood sugar skyrocketing. She tanked. I was like, "Well, there's the source of your afternoon energy slump. Let's troubleshoot around that." So we ended up doing things like nuts or, some sort of, more blood sugar friendly snack. And it was a game changer. So again, that feedback and when it's personalized, I think again, really, really helps.
Absolutely. Is there a specific CGM that you're using or recommending? Like, are you using 'cause there's, like, several brands, now you got Levels, you got NutriSense, they're all going through, I've tried, I think all of them. I've used the Dexcom, I've used the Libre. Which one are you using?
I use the Stello most often just because I feel like that one price point, you can get 2 sensors for $100, and, I've had pretty good luck with them. I like that I can tap into them on the back end as well, and that, if you've used Dexcom, it's a lot like the G7. That's
So
kind of a
Stelo,
short
is that, like, that's the brand of the
er
device itself?
yes, sorry, Dexcom Stello.
Okay, so it's the Dexcom, it's Stelo, and you just go through Stelo's website to pay and get the 'cause they do their subscription or prescription, I guess, through the purchase of Stelo?
Yeah, these you can even get on Amazon. I will say if you order through Stello, I've heard from when I order sensors and send them to clients, they're like, "Well, Amazon delivered it anyway." So you can order from Amazon or you can order from Stello.com. I think they come from essentially the same place and they're the same price. But 2 sensors, $100. It is basically Dexcom's version or over-the-counter version of their G7. So they last 15 up to 15 days, I should say. I know sometimes they'll kinda die out a little bit before that, but if you're doing good skin prep, I feel like usually they'll last that full 15 days.
And you're able to look at the back end so you can see your client's markers as well? That's pretty handy.
Yes. Yeah, that's the great accountability piece. So when you're doing something like tracking macros, it's just easy not to log a meal, right? But when I see 8 PM and your blood sugar skyrocket, I'm like, like what's happening there?
Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah. Yeah.
So what are some, like, if someone is listening to this and maybe they have a CGM on or they've used them in the past, or maybe they've never had a CGM, like, what are some things that you would see, throughout a typical course of the day that you would expect, not expect? What are some common denominators? Like, what are some likely catalysts for these fluctuations? So, like, for instance, the Don phenomenon, it's spiking when you're training. Post meal, what would you expect? Things like that. Just kind of give us a play by play.
Yeah, I will say spikes from exercise are not bad. Like, that
Yeah.
is just
Yeah.
your liver has basically got your back. So, don't worry about spikes from exercise. But I will say when I see spikes from food, a lot of times it's from, a lot of times carbs, having them all by themselves. So if you're even pairing those carbs up with something, I think a lot can be changed without even changing what you're eating, even changing the order in which you eat. So if you've got, chicken, rice, and veggies, if you're doing the veggies, the chicken, and saving that carb for last, that can cut your blood sugar spikes by 30-40%, depending on the ratio. So that's kind of fun just to even experience or experiment with the order in which you eat. I will say another fun experiment is maybe having a meal if you've got some leftovers, having that same meal and then going for a 10-minute walk or a ruck and seeing just that difference because any sort of muscle contraction is going to help pull that blood sugar down without the use of insulin. So one big thing about movement is that when you have some muscle contraction, doesn't necessarily need to be a walk. It could be body weight squats or stretching or anything that's really getting those muscles going that can help shuttle that glucose from your bloodstream without insulin. So that can be really great. I especially like doing that with people who have some pretty significant insulin resistance. And one red flag that I look for is if you eat a meal, specifically a meal usually with carbohydrates, and you jump up and you're staying high. So I like to call it the ledge. Like if you jump up, you see this big ledge and it's taking you more than 2 or 3 hours to come down. That's some pretty telltale signs of late stage insulin resistance.
Do you feel like people wearing a CGM has led to any degree of just fear-mongering, fear around seeing any spike whatsoever? Because like, if you're metabolically healthy, insulin sensitive, if you eat an apple, it's totally normal, and you would expect to see a spike, and then shortly thereafter that, return to baseline. That's not inherently a bad thing at all. Kinda like what you're saying, and you see that elevator for far too long, that's when it's an indicator of that insulin resistance. Have you seen people just become fearful of any spike whatsoever?
Absolutely. And I will say that the goal isn't to flatline your blood sugar. It's normal to have that ebb and flow. I would just say maybe depending on your situation or like how many times you're spiking or spiking specifically out of range. I would say usually the range that I'm setting is 70 to 140. I think that comes pretty standard. If somebody has diabetes, then we're looking at 70 to 180 as that target range. And, say if you're spiking over that target range 4 times a day, maybe we're starting with trying to get it to 2 or 3 and kind of doing incremental change over time. But I certainly see people nervous about incorporating something that might spike them. Again, this is where I like to experiment and say, like, let's do some protein maybe, and then have that thing that you really want, really finding those worth it foods. Cause I see a lot of times where when you have that data, when your blood sugar jumps and then it drops really quickly, a lot of times you feel like crap, your energy plummets, maybe you've got a headache or anxiety, you feel like you've got to lay down or sleep after a meal. Sometimes people are like, once they have that data, they're like, it's not worth it. I had one gal, every time she was going through the kitchen, like grabbing a handful of crackers and wheat thins, and her blood sugar was just up and down and up and down. And she's like, this isn't worth it. She's like, no wonder why I feel like crap. But then again, like on the other side, I do see where people get really, really nervous. So that might be the type of person where I'm like, let's get some good data. We'll do a framework. And then, a CGM is probably not going to be something that's going to be helpful for you 24/7, 365. Like, let's kind of incorporate some of these things. Like I mentioned, maybe pairing protein up with carbs or saving carbs for last, going for walks after a meal. So that way, if you do have something that maybe is less blood sugar friendly, we have some strategies. But again, I feel like spikes here and there are totally normal. And to give some people some peace of mind with that, excuse me, a lot of times I'll say, like, if you're jumping up and you're kind of coming back to baseline really nicely, that's a good sign. So I think it's nice to have what I like to call it glucose excursions instead of
Mhm.
a spike. Like we had a little excursion. It's a good experiment just to maybe see what your insulin sensitivity looks at. But where I get concerned, another red flag that I look at is if somebody spikes and then they kind of rebound below normal. So like a reactive hypoglycemia, because that can tell us that maybe there's some sort of insulin mismatch or, a lot of times we can prevent that with different kind of meal strategies too. So I do like a spike here and there because it gives us extra data that we can troubleshoot and experiment with.
Yeah, totally. My spikes are all from, training. My data is pretty boring on a CGM. Like, I'll use them when I'm doing an experiment or something, but generally speaking, there's like a 20-point window, and it's always just flatlined apart from the training sessions,
Sounds
so
pretty boring. Yeah.
super boring,
It's
super boring.
good. Yeah. Boring
Um,
is good.
have you noticed 'cause, like, are most of your clients, like, are they type 1, type 2, pre-diabetic, not diabetic at all? Like, is there, like, a general, you know, common sense that most of them are?
I would say I tend to work mostly with women. Some maybe have diabetes or excuse me, pre-diabetes. I do have a lot of women who have PCOS, and what tends to run with that a lot of times is insulin resistance. So I would say that they, maybe have some of those signs that we can see on their CGM. So I would say a lot of times people are coming to me maybe wanting to shed some weight, or if they have like really bad cravings that they're working through, or maybe other blood markers. I get a lot of people who are in that pre-diabetic window who want to take action, change their nutrition, get movement going. And the nice thing is that's a great spot to be because it's reversible.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Savage Clip. If you want to see the full blown deep dive, check out the full episode here, and I'll see you there.